As a person with a very deep voice, I'm hired all the time for advertising campaigns. But a deep voice doesn't sell B2B, and advertising on the wrong platform doesn't sell B2B either. That's why if you're a B2B marketer, you should use LinkedIn ads. LinkedIn has the targeting capabilities to help you reach the world's largest professional audience. That's right, over 70 million decision makers all in one place. All the big wigs, then medium wigs, also small wigs who are on the path to becoming big wigs. Okay, that's enough about wigs. LinkedIn ads allows you to focus on getting your B2B message to the right people. So, does that mean you should use ads on LinkedIn instead of hiring me, the man with the deepest voice in the world? Yes. Yes, it does. Get started today and see why LinkedIn is the place to be to be. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply.
Entrepreneurs Enigma is a podcast for the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. It's got the wins and the fails that we all face being entrepreneurs, and how we learn from adversity. Every week I talk to a different entrepreneur with a story to tell. I'm Seth Goldstein. Come with me on the journey. This is Entrepreneurs Enigma. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Entrepreneurs Enigma podcast. As always, twice a week, I'm your host, Seth. Today I have a buddy of mine who I met through Jay Klaus's Creative Science Lab. I think that's what he's calling it now. Or Lab Science, I don't know what he calls it. He changes it ever so often. But it's Andrew McIntosh. He runs his own little side thing called firstgen.biz. It's for first generation business entrepreneurs who need some help and coaching and all that stuff, figuring out what the heck they're doing, why they're doing it, and all that good stuff. Andrew is a serial entrepreneur who was the first in his family to start a business. And so he calls it, obviously, by default, first generation entrepreneur. Kind of makes logical sense. He was an overnight success. It took him about 12 years or so. He started his IT company in 2006. And of course, my math is wrong. You can do the math yourself. It's longer than 12 years, but he sold it in 2021. So he made it into a success. Not an overnight success, folks. Let's remember that. And then he also founded a digital marketing, advertising startup, commercial real estate company, even a small car dealership. And remember, not all these were successes, as he says. Like some of them were like, all right, maybe we'll change our mind here. So let's bring Andrew in here. Hey, buddy, how's it going? Now, Andrew hails from Louisville, Kentucky.
Louisville. Yes.
Louisville.
How's it going?
How's it going, buddy? How you doing? How's the weather out there?
Oh, it's beautiful, man. Yeah, the rest of the country is like melting, but it's actually pleasant outside.
Wow, it's hot here.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Is yours muggy or is yours dry heat?
It is muggy, yeah.
You kind of get the Appalachians. And do you have Appalachians out there?
Yeah, well, we're in a valley, and it's just all kind of like gathers down in here, so it's typically muggy. But right now, it's pretty. We've had enough rain. It's been comfortable. So
our grass won't stop growing. I'm in a HOA, and the landscape company can't keep up with it. My dog walks out and sits down to go pee. Too much information here, but her bum is in the grass. It's just so high because it keeps raining like crazy here. So hey, we'll take it. The grass loves it. So yeah. Andrew, you are a first generation entrepreneur, and you love the first generation entrepreneurs. You see so much that you started a community to help first generation entrepreneurs, which is really cool. But let's go back a little bit. What made you become an entrepreneur in the first place?
Well, that's a great question. And yeah, I appreciate your intro. I think I might start using that actually. Come to think of it. I'm an overnight 15-year success.
Yeah, I love it. I think it was 15 years. Yeah, I said 12, but yeah, it's 15 years.
Yeah, give or take. What's a few years between?
It's not overnight though, folks. There you go.
Yeah. I love that quote from Jeff Bezos that every overnight success takes 10 years. Like,
oh my God, easily. He wasn't an overnight success.
Right.
He kept on chugging along and doing his thing, Now he's a gazillionaire.
Right. By the time you're actually on a bunch of people's radar, there's been a lot of effort put in to get to that point.
You're able to sell your company saying that you had $2 million in revenue, meaning that they're going to, when they buy your company, they're getting something. They're not just getting a logo kind of thing. So.
Yeah, not just getting a logo, not just buying somebody else's job. It was definitely a working, functioning machine that generated cash that they wanted to buy. So
that's wild.
Yeah.
And from what I hear, it was like right at the right time. It was kind of like you were kind of like over it. You're
Yeah,
ready
I
to rock and
was.
roll.
Yeah. I'd been doing IT. Like my first quote unquote real job was at a computer store when I was 14 years old.
We all did that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's all I've ever done is IT stuff.
Okay.
And so if I never have to fix someone's computer again in my life, I will be totally cool with it.
You're stuck though, because friends, family orders like, Andrew, well, I did something. Help me.
I always joke that when I'm in the room, my wife just suddenly forgets how to use anything that plugs into a wall. It's like comical.
It happens with my mom. My mom just has
Yeah.
to try things and she'll
Right.
figure it out. And so she calls me and says, how do I hit print? I'm like, Mom,
Right.
you're a boomer. You're a boomer. You're not, but no, not a boomer in a derogatory sense. You came up. Yeah, I remember before the internet. You know, yeah, I'm 42, so like I remember like I'm at the cusp of the internet. I remember not having, I remember dial up and all that stuff. But she wasn't that old when this computer stuff came into fruition either. She's smarter than she lets herself on to be. I mean, hell, she has a PhD in psychology. She can figure out how to print.
She's no dummy. Yeah. That's what I tell my wife is like, okay, let's just pretend that I wasn't in the room for a moment. Now what would you do? You know, and then suddenly she figures it out. So it's like, it's just a running joke.
It's a crutch. It's like, oh, Andrew's here. We'll have him fix it for me. We're going to take a quick break, hear from our sponsors, and get right back to the show.
As a person with a very deep voice, I'm hired all the time for advertising campaigns. But a deep voice doesn't sell B2B, and advertising on the wrong platform doesn't sell B2B either. That's why if you're a B2B marketer, you should use LinkedIn ads. LinkedIn has the targeting capabilities to help you reach the world's largest professional audience. That's right, over 70 million decision makers all in one place. All the big wigs, then medium wigs, also small wigs who are on the path to becoming big wigs. Okay, that's enough about wigs. LinkedIn ads allows you to focus on getting your B2B message to the right people. So, does that mean you should use ads on LinkedIn instead of hiring me, the man with the deepest voice in the world? Yes, it does. Get started today and see why LinkedIn is the place to be to be. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply.
Right, exactly. But yeah, I've been an IT guy for a very long time. Turned entrepreneur in 2006 when I quit my day job, also in IT.
Oh, so it wasn't random that you started an IT company. You kind of, it wasn't like, I have no idea what IT is. I'm going to start IT. So you weren't going completely blind.
Correct. I was, granted, I'm a little biased, but I think I was a pretty good IT guy, or at least I thought I was at the time.
You have the personality for it. You're a nice guy. So that you have that going for you.
You know what's funny is back in 2006, that was like an honest differentiator. It was like, I'm an IT guy who knows how to look people in the eye and smile and shake their hand.
Yeah. It's still that way. It's still that way. There's the gearheads that are kind of behind the scenes. They're not they don't want to be on the front.
Right.
So.
I think that's changing. That's evolving. It's not quite the stereotype anymore that it used to be, but that was a real thing for a long time. Now I know a lot of IT guys that they're people, right? It's not people for hire. $75 an hour. Wow. If you run a small business, that I will say it was exclusively businesses. I wasn't doing any kind of residential stuff.
It's a whole nother ball game.
Yeah, whole different thing. I leave that to the Geek Squad. Like that's
that's better off to them. Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, but $75 an hour, and you just call me when you need me, and I'll work on your computers for you. But then it quickly evolved into, hey, if I'm billing you by the hour to fix your problems, then the more problems you have, the better off I am. And so we're not really on the same team here.
Yeah.
And so I went to a flat rate model where you're basically paying a monthly retainer. Mm-hmm.
You're guaranteed some money in the pocket, and they get you.
Exactly. Yeah. And
that's what I do with my business. Yeah, absolutely. I could do hourly, but I also only keep track of my damn hours. That's dreadful.
Yeah, it's littered with problems when you do hourly stuff because there's a couple things. Number one is, like I said, I'm incentivized to bill you more hours, right? Yeah. And so I'm going to slow down in my work. That's not great.
Yeah.
And then it calls into question your ethics and the trust. Like I remember back when I was still billing hourly, I had a guy on like 2 or 3 occasions, he'd get a bill from me and he'd call me up and be like, so did you really spend 3 hours on this? You know? And it was just like, bro,
It is what it is.
You're basically calling me a liar is what it works.
Yeah.
Like I really took it personally. We wound up yelling at each other. It didn't go nicely and I still harbored resentment, but I got away from that model, went to a flat rate. You pay me a monthly retainer, but it scales. I priced mine based on the number of employees that you have.
So that more employees, more computers, more problems.
Right. And then that creates some predictability for me too, right? Like I'm assured that your scope and the workload's going to increase with time, but so does my revenue. And that makes predictability for me to be able to hire people. So people liked that model.
Yeah.
It was basically an outsourced IT department. So it's just one thing that as the CEO or the owner of this business, you can just kind of check that off and just say, okay,
it's done.
A headache.
Andrew's got it. Good. I don't have to hire someone in-house, another W-2 for something that I might need an Andrew for part-time or not even part-time. I might hire Joe, comes in, needs a new computer. I can say, hey, Andrew, set up one of those computers for me. You know, and then you're like, all right, give me a day and you get it set up. Brilliant.
And it's a little harder than that too, because you're absolutely right the way that you described it. But the other part of it is IT. Think of it like marketing. That's a big word.
Yeah, it's a big word. Yeah.
And there's a lot of disciplines within the marketing umbrella.
Yeah. IT is a lot too. Yeah.
Yeah. IT is the same way. And so it's more expensive to hire an IT person full time. You don't know what you don't know. So how are you going to go hire someone and know if they're even qualified to do the job? And then there's different disciplines that are required. Like one guy isn't going to cut it because he doesn't know all the things that you need to know to be able to have a functioning IT department, essentially.
So did you hire more people so that you could cover, like you were at the computer builder, then there was an IT security guy, there was a Windows guy, a Mac guy. Did you build that out eventually?
Yeah. So how it started was like any business, if you do good work and you charge a fair rate, your name starts to spread and referrals come in, and that's great.
Yeah.
But in the IT world, different from a lot of industries, you're really kind of on call 24/7, especially back then. This was before the cloud was like a thing, right?
You could just text Google and say, Google, why is it down?
Yeah. Well, and people were still dependent on servers that were just humming away in a closet somewhere. And if that server went offline, their whole business shut down. Right?
Yeah.
Some businesses still operate that way, but
it's not advisable. It's not advisable anymore.
Well, and it's only the bigger businesses that are still doing that because it's ultimately still more cost effective for them at a certain scale than outsourcing everything. Yeah. But most of your small businesses though, that are under 10, 15, 20 employees, like that's a no.
Yeah, let's get Google Cloud, honestly.
Yeah, nobody would do that.
Get Google Cloud, get Google Workspace.
Yes.
It just seems to work.
Yeah. But back in those days, they were dependent on these pieces of equipment there in their closet. And so if one of them went down, the whole business is shut down, and I'm on call essentially 24/7.
Oh, God.
And so it got to the point where, I had a lot of business coming in. I was actually making more money really in my first year than I was at my day job, which sounds cool.
But that comes
more responsibility, and I couldn't take time off. Like I couldn't take a vacation.
The entrepreneur's dilemma.
Yep, exactly. And then the straw on the camel's back for me was one day I was actually homesick. I had like a stomach bug. I had no business going anywhere.
Yeah.
And a customer had a server crash, and their whole company was down, and they were blowing my phone up. Like,
of course,
but
you were also stomach bugged.
But yeah, so I just had to like take a bunch of Imodium or whatever.
Stop yourself up.
Yeah, dude, it was.
Oh, that sounds brutal, my friend. Yeah.
So that was the point where I said, okay, this isn't working. Like I either need to go back to a day job, or I need to double down on this thing and hire somebody.
Yeah.
And I chose to hire somebody, which then came with a bunch of really tough learning experiences because
HR,
HR,
payroll. Actually, I hear the first employee is the hardest for payroll.
100%.
Even though you're technically the first employee, I hear that like first actual W-2.
Yeah.
Then you have two people on your team. You go.
Mm-hmm. So I learned a bunch of things the hard way at that point.
Of course, you have
to. For one, I had no idea what I was doing and what it meant to be a good boss or a good leader.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I assumed, I went into this thinking, hey, if I hire this person, I've just overnight bolted on 40 hours a week worth of capacity.
We've all done it. Anyone who like us, because we both are like first generation entrepreneurs, not knowing our head from our asses, and
exactly.
it's not. They have a ramp up period. Let's just remember that.
There's a long ramp up period, and it'll probably vary depending on the job, depending on the industry. But for me, I think in the IT world, it was on average, I would say 6 months before somebody was like fully kind of useful, if you will. Unless they happen to come from a competitor and they just could jump right in, right?
Yeah, and even then they still have to learn how you do things. So it's still probably 2 months then anyhow. So yeah.
So then what I found was, it was like, okay, hold on a second. A month ago, I was making more money than I was at my day job. Now I've hired someone and I'm making less money because I'm paying them.
Yeah.
And I'm having to train them. And I have actually, I feel like, less time than on my hands than I did a minute ago.
Well, yeah, especially at the beginning, because you got the ramp up period. Yeah.
Right. And it was like, this is not what I signed up for. And then that created some pressure on me. And then this individual is actually a friend of mine. And so there's like personal. Yeah. And that was a mistake.
That's another mistake.
Because it's just too intertwined, you know. So it's just like all these rookie mistakes.
And so then you're making this, but that's the whole reason why you're making this firstgen.biz entrepreneurs, to help people try to not make or soften the blow of making the same mistake. Because everyone says, I'm trying to make it so you don't make the same mistake. No, you're going to make some of the same mistakes. Even if Andrew or I or somebody tells you, don't do that, you're still going to do half of them.
Right.
But you might be able to recover faster.
Exactly. And you're spot on, because since I was the first person in my family to start a business, I really didn't have anybody to turn to for advice. In later years, I made the mistake of turning to my own employees when I wanted to bounce ideas off of them or whatever. That actually creates.
Sometimes it's good.
Sometimes, but you can also overshare. And that's what I did. And I wound up stressing them out, you know, because they're like, wait, hold on a second. You know, that's just not a good look. Right. So I needed people that I could turn to. I didn't have them. And that's what this community is all about. But you're spot on that it's like, it's not that I'm going to help you, you know, avoid making mistakes.
No, you're still going to make mistakes. Yeah.
It's still going to be painful. It's still going to be long. But you know what? If I can make it even just 10% less painful and 10% faster, like that's a huge win. You know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of what I'm out to do. And then back to my journey, I essentially just kind of kept repeating that process. Like I didn't repeat. Yeah, it was the school of hard knocks. It was just making a bunch of mistakes, getting a black eye, and then trying to fix that and heal from it, and then just be hard-headed enough to just keep going.
Yeah.
But then that was the process, is you just keep getting new business comes in, some from referrals, some from some outbound efforts that we were putting into place. And then you get to where you have a little too much work. You hire another person. Now I've got a little too much staff and our margins are thin. I need more work. So let me get more customers. And then you just kind of keep doing that. Fast forward 15 years, we were at $2 million a year in revenue. I had 13 employees.
Wow. Lucky number 13. Hey.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was making the most amount of money I had ever made, and I was working the least amount of money.
Ooh, right? You finally got to that point.
And that's kind of the promised land, right? Like that's where people are trying to get to. And I've been out there trying to beat that drum and let people know, like, that's a real place. It's not a mirage. Like you can get there.
Yeah.
But getting there requires an extraordinary amount of effort.
It does. It absolutely does. So the transfer into so in your mind we'll have this is a two-part question. What's the best thing about being an entrepreneur in your mind? I mean, because there is a lot of hard knocks, but there's some good stuff too.
Yeah. So I think that it's hard to articulate exactly because no two people are going to define this the same way, but the freedom that you get as an entrepreneur, once you get over what I call the entrepreneurial hump.
Yes.
Then once you taste the freedom of that like, hey, if I want to pick up and go to Disney World with my family, and you know what? I decided today that I'm going to do it next week. It's like, you can do that. And there's nobody, you don't need permission from anybody.
Yeah.
You don't need to think twice about it. You can just do it. And then in that moment, it's just like, wow, that's pretty awesome. Like, I wouldn't be able to do that at a day job. Now, it doesn't always have to be something big like that. Like for me, I enjoy going on walks. There's a park nearby, and in the middle, in fact, after we're done with this recording, guess what? I'm headed to the park to go do a walk.
Good boy. There you go. That's a good thing. It's good. Yeah. It's good to air your brain out a little bit. That's a good thing.
And just having that freedom of choosing who you want to work with, what you want to do, how you want to do it, when you want to do it, when you want to take time off. And see, I haven't even gotten into like the financial aspects of it, which can also be pretty freeing. So all of that, once you get to that level of maturity in your business where it's affording you that type of freedom, I think is like by far the best aspect of entrepreneurship for me personally.
So on the flip side, what's the scariest thing?
The scariest thing is being on the wrong side of that hump.
Yeah. Amen to that one.
Yeah.
Or falling back into the hump after you've seen the promised land.
Well, so that's interesting that you say that, because that's where I'm at today. Like I sold that business, and it was 15 years old. It was established. It was affording me that lifestyle and those freedoms, and that was good. And I sold it. And I did well on it, but not so well that I never need to work again a day in my life. Like, I still need to do something, right?
Yeah.
And so I've decided to start up this community for first gens. Well, guess what? I'm bootstrapping it all over again. I've created something out of thin air.
Yeah.
Which is really cool and satisfying, but the revenue is not enough to live off of right now. And it's like, it's slowly, creeping its way up there. And I'm just out there kind of grinding every day. I'm on social. I'm starting conversations with people. I'm educating them on what this is to raise awareness, while actually doing the thing inside the community and helping people.
Bring people in, and you actually have to do the work.
Yeah. You need to do the work, right? It's offense, defense. So it's kind of ironic that here I am, a successful entrepreneur, and I'm feeling the heat right now.
But it's also kind of addictive to build something again.
It is. Yeah, it is. And it's, I think it's kind of exciting. Anything that you do a second time, it's going to go quicker than the first time you did it. Right.
It does, yeah.
I remember one time, my wife and I, we bought a play set for our daughter, and it came, the instructions, it was clearly made in China, and the instructions were super unclear. And it took us like all weekend to assemble this thing. Yeah. But once I got to the end of it, I was like, man, if I had to assemble this again right now,
you could do it.
I could do it in like 4 hours instead of an entire week.
Yeah.
Right.
IKEA kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm banking on that, hoping
there you go.
It's true on this second go around here.
That's good.
Yeah. But it's a real thing, man. It's being on that side of the hump is a lot of work. And I think that not everybody has the chops to do it.
Personally. No, it's also, but it's not nothing wrong with trying it, but then also be willing to say, this isn't for me. Maybe you go back and do a side hustle while you're working for the man or the woman or the person, that kind of thing. Nothing wrong with a side hustle.
Yeah. I had a conversation with someone recently who said, I'm not sure I'm cut out for this. I don't, it's not really giving them the fulfillment that they thought it was going to.
Yeah.
Now I tried to help them see that this takes time. You gotta stick with it for a while to know for sure, but not everybody is going to enjoy it. But for those who kind of, this is an itch that needs scratched for them, there's something there that really kind of fuels them and makes them want to push forward. It's like, okay, well, you've got it, whatever it is. But you've got that kind of fire in your belly that's going to help you to overcome the inevitable challenges that happen.
It's inevitable. Absolutely.
It is. Yeah. But then you're going to get to a point where you once you hit that inflection point and you reach the apex of that hump, everything starts getting easier.
Yeah.
And you start making more money and you're working less and you get all these lifestyle benefits that start to come with it. And you get fulfillment that comes from like providing a quality product or service to your customer. It's just like you see it having an impact on your employees and the personal lives that they get to experience. And it's like, this is really cool.
Yeah, this is where we want to be. So what is the most important thing to carry with you all the time?
You might take this with a grain of salt because I'm literally out there selling a community membership that supports other entrepreneurs. So this might come off a little sales pitchy, but I do mean it, like legitimately.
Yeah.
Anytime I was faced with a challenge in my business and I tried to address it alone, that was 10 times harder than when I just would reach out to some people who've been there, who can either tell you what to do or ask you the right questions to help you come to that conclusion on your own, or even just help you understand that this is normal, that you'll be okay, and that you'll get through this and just keep chugging along. Because what's the statistic? Like 50% of all businesses fail in the first 5 years. It's like, how many of that 50% that fail would have survived if they were just rubbing shoulders with the right people who could help them get through the tough times?
Yeah.
You know, and if you can hang on to that and get through the tough times and overcome them, there's a lot of, kind of reward at the end of the tunnel there if you can stick with it.
There is. I love that. So where can people find you online? Where's your main watering hole? Like you said, socials. Like, where do you hang out the most?
Where I hang out the most right now on LinkedIn.
I love LinkedIn. Of the closed platforms, I love LinkedIn.
Yeah, I think it's just where my people are mostly. However, I've recently started getting on Twitter as well.
You're one of the brave ones. It's jumping back into the dumpster fire.
Yes. Yeah. I feel it's 2023, July, and I'm actually going into Twitter, which feels pretty absurd. However, I've talked to a few people who are big advocates for it, though, and they make a pretty compelling case. Because at the end of the day, it's really about where your ideal audience is. Nothing else really matters. Say what you will about the guy running Twitter or about any other platform, what you like and dislike. But if that's where your audience is,
you got to be there. Absolutely.
You gotta be there, right? No point fishing in a pond that doesn't have any fish in it. So
exactly.
In terms of social, those are the two places that I tend to hang out.
And of course, the community.
Yeah. The community itself is it's a private gated website. It is a paid subscription for people to join. But the general kind of strategy here is like, I'm building a bridge that helps get you to the point where you can afford a one-on-one business coach.
Yeah.
Because I think those are awesome. I love them. I had a great experience with mine. I think everybody needs one. You can't always afford one, at least not in the
God, they're expensive. Yeah.
So this is like a substitute for that. That's like group coaching that'll help you get to the point where you can do that. So the main website, firstgen.biz, if you want to check it out.
And first is 1ST.
Yes. Now that you say that, I'm pretty sure I bought it all spelled out as well. I need to go double check.
That's a real one. Redirect that. Yeah.
I got to make sure that's working. But yes, the number 1 ST.
We'll have in the show notes so people can just click.
Yeah.
Well, Andrew, this has been so much fun. I'm glad we've got you on. And guess what? We'll see everyone next time.
Hey, thanks for having me, Seth.
That was a great show. If you're enjoying Entrepreneurs Enigma, please review us in the podcast directory of your choice. Every review helps other podcast listeners find our show. If you're looking for other podcasts in the marketing space, look no further than the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcasts.net. Steam Media hopes you have enjoyed this episode. This podcast is one of the many great shows on the MPN Marketing Podcast Network.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Tim Hines hosts a great podcast called the Marketing Starter Podcast. Tim, tell these fine folks what they're going to get when they listen.
They're going to get great insights on how marketers can take an entrepreneurial attitude to what they do in marketing to be a little bit more successful. So I interview top marketers from all around the world, and heck, even some that are bottom and middle. It's really about marketers who embody the entrepreneurial spirit to be the best that they can be.
Awesome. Where can people subscribe?
They can, of course, subscribe on marketingpodcast.net, but they can also search for the show on all their favorite podcasting platforms, as well as visiting my website, which is tnhines.com/podcast.
You heard him. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.